She's like, please don't go like this.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the October 19th, 2021 Board of Education regular meeting at 7 p.m. Sarah, good evening to you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berardi?
Here.
Mrs. Deck?
Here.
Mrs. Long? Here. Mrs. Lozano?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Palazzo?
Here.
Mr. Trabuzio?
Here.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Quorum has been established. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. Mazzano, would you be so kind to read the mission statement?
Of course. The mission of Norridge School District 8 is inspiring educational excellence in a nurturing environment.
All right, thank you, sir. As we've implemented into the board meetings, our celebration of success section, now's the time. So if anybody would like to celebrate anything, now's the time to do so.
We had the first fall band concert last night at Giles School. The concert band played 3 songs, and then there was an ice cream social afterwards at Sweet Oasis, who did donate 20% of the profits to the band.
Very good.
It was a great night.
Good to hear. Anyone else?
At Giles School, we had our first student-led conferences. The students did an amazing job. It was, I sat in, I went on each staff's and sat in on one, and it was great to hear that the students take ownership for their learning, communicate their goals, and where they like to see themselves with scoring on assessments for the future. So it was a great evening, and I look forward to this week to finish up the fall student-led conferences.
Very good.
So Natalie, I just want to take a moment to shout out our top tigers for the month of September, who all received a certificate for exemplifying what it means to be a lead tiger, being safe, responsible, and respectful. We did share some photos out with the community via the weekly tracks, but we'll also have a little handout with some additional information on those students as well. So just wanted to shout that out, and also share that we have our school store up and running. So Palmer, where students were able to come on in and exchange the paws that they've been earning throughout the school year so far for the first time last week. So we're really excited about that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to our action item, I'd ask the board to consider the approval of the agenda as presented or potentially modified.
I'd like to table item 15G. We probably will be talking about the other 3 grants, and we're just not there yet.
All right, that's 15. What is that, Rob?
15G.
15G is approved.
Yes.
All right, we'll table that. Any discussion from the board based on Mr. Gregg's comments or otherwise? Okay. I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as now modified with tabling item 15G as in George.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Frank, seconded by Mom. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mr. Trabuzio?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Mrs. Long? Yes. Mr. Lozano?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Again, I want to welcome everybody to the meeting tonight, all our visitors here. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Correspondence for the district, there is no correspondence to report. Public participation, we're going to check that. But we do have public participation. You want to read that one?
Sure. At each regular or special meeting which is open to the public, the Illinois School Code and board policy require that members of the public and the board's employees be afforded time to comment or ask questions. The board's agenda designates this portion of the meeting to recognize those visitors and provide an opportunity for comments or to ask questions. The board asks that speakers identify themselves and limit comments or questions to no more than 5 minutes. The 5 minutes may be shortened if the president must conserve time to give the maximum number of individuals an opportunity to speak. Speakers are reminded to conduct themselves with respect and civility towards others. The board also requests that speakers refrain from identifying individual students or staff. Speakers who choose to identify specific students or staff do so at their own risk. Please keep in mind that the opportunity to engage in public comment at a school board meeting does not insulate speakers from libel or violation of privacy. Lastly, if someone wishes to present an unresolved complaint to the board requests that you contact Mr. Grimm. Thank you, and the board now looks forward to your comments and questions.
All right, Tim Weston.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? It's been a while. I want to bring up 2 words tonight. I sat on that side of the table for 4 years and took some months off and had some time to reflect and kind of take in the community again. So I wanted to bring up 2 words, and that's focus and options. It was very easy when I sat on the other side to lose focus of certain things with everything that's put on the board's plate. Big decisions, many avenues, lots of things to think about, and sometimes some things get put on the back burner. Things I want to bring up about focus are education. Writing our mission statement, educational excellence. As I said before I left my seat on the board, the district is falling short. We have staff, we have resources. There's no reason why over 50% of our population as a whole should be in the yellow. That's mediocre. We are a better community, we have a better staff, we have a better board, and we can provide more for the kids to get more children into the grade. The middle is not okay. Along with that, nurturing environment. As most probably have seen comments about lunchtimes and this and that, it's not an attack. I ask the board and the staff to look at yourselves. Nurturing environment. When we want our kids to test, what we push on the parents. Have a good breakfast. Get them up. Get them moving. Now, in our own staff and the agreements and the contracts, we have time for personal craft during the day. We have scheduled lunch times during the day that are twice as long as we're asking the kids to have. That we're asking them to focus and be nourished during the school day. Roll that in along with what the children are going through with COVID, with the masks, with the social time. This recess and lunch, this is their time to talk. This is their social time. Not all of them have the ability to get out or have the health situations to get out and interact with other children in public. This is their time to be with their friends and neighbors. And a matter of options, brought up the word options. There are things that are brought on board, there are things that are forced on the board, decisions that are forced to be made from the government above, from the state, from the Illinois State Board of Education. But within a lot of those, there are options. One of the main problems I had was voting for restorative justice because I didn't believe it. And I still do not believe it. And I can't believe from what I hear that there can be damage done within a school that takes more than a couple seconds. Damage that you can see on videos that takes 10 to 15, 20 minutes, a half hour to complete some of these tasks that are being done in school by the children, destructive tasks, and it goes unnoticed by staff. So that's where I bring up focus and options. I want everybody here, from staff to the board, reflect back, look at what we've had. Even with restorative justice, there are options. There are things that the district can change within the district to solidify and bring some amount of discipline back instead of being a fun day for the kids to brag with their friends. And then it spreads. Let's focus on the education. I spent 4 years dealing with many different things, and I myself, not all the time, paid attention to the yellow until the end, as other things got done. The yellow is not what this community needs. Yellow is not what this community wants. We have the staff. To the board, whatever you can to look at it, you should be disappointed in as well. To the staff, many, many months sitting on the other side, sometimes we asked what you needed, sometimes we didn't. Please do not feel afraid with this board. I worked with most of them for a couple years. come together as a staff. Let them know what you need. Training, support, anything is missing. Yellow is not okay for North District 8. It never should have been, and it shouldn't be going to be.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Good to see you. Moving on to the FOIA request. We have 5 of them, but they're a little comfortable in receipt because they're a little late. Like I said, there's 5. The first one being local labs. Vince Esky, dated September the 28th, 2021, requesting all data of any faculty or student with a COVID-19 positive test result. COVID-19-like symptoms, close contacts to a confirmed COVID-19 case that were reported to the local health department over the previous 7 days. That's FOIA request 1. Number 2, Vince Espy from Local Labs again, dated September the 29th, 2021, requesting a list of all materials in the district that fall under the 1619 project. A list of all books written by authors Ibram X. Kendi, also known as Henry Rogers, or Ruben D'Angelo, that are used in curriculum or libraries in your school district. FOIA request number 3, Local Labs Vince Espy, dated September the 30th, 2021, requesting 1, how much money has the district received under the American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Grant Program, otherwise known as ARP-ESSER. Please provide the totals and dates of receipts, along with a grand total of money received from this program. 2, Section 2001 of the ARP Act requires any district that receives ARP-ESSER funds to develop and make publicly available on its website within 30 days after receiving its allocation a plan for a safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. Prior to making the plan public, the LEA must seek public comment on the plan and take such comments into consideration when developing the plan. Where is the plan available currently? On the district's website. When did the district publish said plan? Did you seek public comment on the plan as to when, where, and how? Please provide all documents relating to the communication of this plan to the general public. 3, also under the ARP Act, every district that receives ARP-ESSER funds must develop a plan for its use on them and submit it to the Illinois State Board of Education within 90 days. Did you provide the plan to the State of Illinois Board of Education? If so, when? Please provide a copy of what you provided to ISBE, so it's ISBE. 4, ARP-ESSER also requires enhanced reporting of spending of these funds from your district and ISBE. Have you provided the reporting thus far? If so, please provide all the sources. FOIA request number 4, from NBC University, Kathleen Smizer, dated October the 4th, 2021, requesting all documents, data, and/or spreadsheets sufficient to show all unclaimed funds under the control of Norridge School District 80 which have not being in all caps, been reported or transferred to the Illinois State Treasurer for inclusion in the state's unclaimed property on database. This would include unclaimed property and property that is not yet old enough to be transferred to the Treasurer, including unclaimed refunds of any type, uncashed and/or state checks or warrants, refunds, reimbursement for taxes, tuition, housing, incidentals, insurance payments, expenses, or any other type of refund or reimbursement, and all other unclaimed property and money which is currently under the control of your agency. For all documents, data, or spreadsheets that contain information on these unclaimed funds, I am requesting all fields of data, person, or entity to which each fund is due, a description of what each piece of unclaimed property or money is, any control number or property, number attached to each property, and any applicable dates connected with each piece of unclaimed property. Secondly, I am requesting documents, data, and/or spreadsheets showing all unclaimed property which your office has, as being in all caps, reported and/or transferred to the Illinois State Treasurer in response to the requirements of Illinois Revised Uniform Unclaimed Property Act from January the 1st, 2016 to present. I request these documents, data, and/or spreadsheets include all available fields, including the specific amount of each parcel of unclaimed property which was recorded and/or transferred to the Illinois Treasurer's Office. A description of what the property or cash is, the name of the address of the person or entity due the property or cash, any date associated with each parcel of unclaimed property or cash, and any control number or other reference number for the property or cash. Thirdly, I am requesting documents, data, and spreadsheets showing all claims for unclaimed property due to being in all caps, Norridge School District's paid from the Illinois Treasurer's Unclaimed Property Fund, for which you have submitted a claim or documentation to the Illinois Treasurer's Office from January the 1st, 2016 to the present, including the amount of each property claim, the date your office submitted the claim, property ID number from the Illinois State Treasurer's Unclaimed Property Database, and the current status of each claim that has been submitted, whether the property or money has been received or whether the claim is still pending. Lastly, FOIA request number 5 is from the Illinois Education Association, NEA, Joe Hart, dated October the 7th, 2021, requesting the names of all non-certified support staff employed by the Norridge School District 80, their job titles, their date of hire, their work building, and its address, the number of hours they are scheduled or have worked per week, the number of hours they are scheduled per year, their collective bargaining status, example, whether they are not covered by the collective bargaining agreement, and if they're in the bargaining unit, the name of the labor organization with which the unit is affiliated, the identity and services provided of any subcontract companies currently engaged in district support work, including but not limited to transportation services, regular or special ed, food services, custodial services, technology services, and security services. Those are the 5 FOIAs, and again, they'll be on our district website. They should be tomorrow, Sarah, correct? Will they be on the website?
With the answer comes up tomorrow.
Yep, thank you very much.
So, I would just inform the board that we've answered the first 4. We are working on number 5. We have met all the timelines. We will need the timeline for the 5th one. We did receive an additional FOIA request on a different topic today. We'll be reporting that to you next month. And I also need to remind board members that if you have not completed the FOIA training and the Open Meetings Act training, we need to help you do that sooner rather than later. If you've already done it once, you don't have to do it again. If you haven't done it, we need to help you get that completed fairly soon.
Okay, well, thank you. Moving on to our administrative reports, I'm going to turn it right back over to you, Mr. Rutherford.
I think all the comments that I want to make tonight are included within the agenda items. So with authority of the board, I think I'll just refrain from commenting at this point, and I'll add some things as we go through the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Guzman.
Thank you. I do have a couple of things to report on. The first thing that I want to report on is our Standards Alignment Committee, which is ESSER funded. One of the 4 top things that was identified by the teachers last year. It started on October 8th, and the SIP day, the teachers met at grade level or subject level teams and started identifying the standards that we are covering. The purpose of this committee to meet, and this committee will meet all year, starting the first day of October 27th, is to align our standards to make sure what we're covering, to look at if we're covering standards and then going back and reteaching them. And so it's looking at the horizontal alignment and also the vertical alignment. Right now, we're focusing mostly on math and ELA standards. My second thing is tonight in the agenda, I'm asking you to approve the Consolidated District Plan. Every year, we are required as a district to send a plan to ISB, to Illinois State Board of Education, that tells what we're doing with our grant money for the year. The words consolidated mean it's looking at all of the grants that we have, putting them all together into one document, which you have a copy of tonight on the in board book, and it shows all of the things that we're working on. You're familiar with most of them already. This is just all of them combined into one place. I am working with the principals on the academic coaching piece of, again, an ESSER 2 funded initiative that we're starting for coaching for social emotional learning, ELA, social studies, math, and science. So we are looking at coaches coming in and working directly with our teachers in order to be fulfilling our standards and looking at everything that we're teaching with the standards and how we can improve them. So that is a big piece that we're working on right now. And the last thing is kind of two parts. This evening, I am asking you to take a look at the Paraprofessional Evaluation instrument that was just created. We had an older version of the Paraprofessional Evaluation that we are updating this year. I worked with Sarah Mizell and Christine Ahrens on this, and they did a really fabulous job putting this together. It's in discussion tonight and then for approval on November 9th. The second piece is item 18J on the agenda and action items, personnel. I am asking you to look at an increase on the paraprofessionals' pay when they are acting as a substitute teacher for the day. As I'm sure you're aware, in Illinois and probably in every state, we have a great shortage in teachers. Along with that is a shortage in substitutes. We're really struggling. Everyone is really struggling. So we looked into our pay compared to other districts' pay, and we feel we're very competitive in the substitute pay. So it's not that it's not that we're not paying enough or trying to attract people. It's just that substitutes don't really exist right now. There's several reasons for it. The teaching shortage is part of it. Also, COVID is part of it. We have been able to stay afloat, to be quite honest with you, because our paraprofessionals have been keeping us afloat. So I would like to recognize them with an increase in their hourly rate on days when they are acting as a teacher on that day. I'm very thankful for their hard work, because as I said, to be honest with you, we would not be able to keep our doors open if they weren't jumping into those positions and helping us out. And that is everything on my report. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our building monthly reports, we'll start with Mr. Jackie.
Thank you. So as Mrs. Guzik said, our band program had a concert yesterday. Amazing job by our students, and also under the direction of Mr. Chris Piccaro. We had the ice cream social, which 20% of that went to the band. And also Mrs. Ahrens is passing out two flyers. One is for a band spirit wear. So we're offering spirit wear also as a fundraiser to help support the band program. And so far that's going pretty well. So we wanted to share that with you as well. And then the second flyer I'll talk about in a few moments. I'd like to give special thanks to the Village of Norridge Public Works, Mr. Joe Span. They came out and on Cullum, they painted bright yellow the curb lines on Cullum where students are getting picked up or dropped off. So I wanted to give special thanks to the Public Works for that. Our athletic season is off to a great start. The boys in soccer are doing a great job. They're coached by Mr. Gino Gappistoni. Our girls volleyball team has their first home game tomorrow at Giles, and they are coached by Mrs. Judy Figg. Our PBIS program, part of that is one of our first incentives regarding athletics is Pack the Place tomorrow at Giles School. So any student in attendance tomorrow at the volleyball game will get 20 PBIS points, and we're asking students to wear their spirit wear as well. Spirit Week is the last week of October 25th to the 29th. It's also Red Ribbon Week, and that's the additional flyer that you all just received. So there'll be points, PBIS points earned that entire week for when students come to school during that designated day each day. We will have an assembly on Friday, October 29th. We're going to do we're going to do a Halloween bingo, and then the opportunity for everyone to listen to me over the intercom, give some jokes, which is always a great time. My jokes are great. Minute to win it assembly we're going to do, and so they're going to have a great time. Students could use their points and get into a raffle to be selected to participate in the minute to win it. So it's going to be a great day on the 29th. We are going to do some grade wars. So what we're going to do, instead of dressing in Halloween costumes, each grade is going to dress in a specific color, designated color. And so we're going to see who has the most school spirit. Kind of brings you back to your high school days, if wherever you went. We are having, the PTA is sponsoring a Giles Fall Dance. That's Friday, November 5th. We will have fall picture retakes on Wednesday, November 3rd. And 8th grade pictures are going to be on Monday, November 8th. And this will all be communicated out with everyone. I wanted to make you all aware. Our science and STEAM labs are progressing. We do have a projected completion around mid-November is our goal. The crews are doing a great job getting that ready. The equipment is in. It's currently in warehouse and Elk Grove. And so once we're ready with the floors and the wall, the equipment will be delivered to Giles School. We are looking to do a ribbon cutting ceremony, but before that ribbon cutting ceremony, we'd like to have a special VIP for our board members and the Norridge Schools Foundation to come through the facility to check it out. When we do the ribbon cutting ceremony, we are going to have our science teachers are going to do some interactive stations within the labs. So it's going to be exciting for our students and our parents community to come through those two classrooms. I'd like to give some COVID data. So we've had 2 positive cases, close contact 1. We've had 9 sick tested, waiting for results, and we've had 21 sick, but they tested negative. So that's our results. They also are posted every Friday in the weekly tracks. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board? Mr. Bianchi, thank you. We'll turn over to Dr. Raviolo.
All right. Thank you. So the past few weeks, our grade level teachers have been working through data protocols in grade level meetings that we have each week to better understand where students are performing academically. And based on those data protocols, we have been able to start providing reading interventions during what we had as our wing time, when I need an intervention block for our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders. In addition to that, we've also invited select 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students. We're currently 24 students for an after-school reading intervention group. And we're hoping to expand the number of students that we're able to provide this support to, based on onboarding and training of additional title paraprofessionals, 2 of whom are actually on the board agenda for approval tonight. In addition to that, we have seen some, social and emotional needs of students coming back into the regular, routine of school. And I think we anticipated some of these challenges. This is the 3rd school year that's been impacted by the pandemic. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we're taking proactive steps to make sure that students are supported. And we are making sure that we're doing that by also reviewing our SEL data, which is through SABRS. And then we'll be also following up on some specific plans in terms of our social emotional learning that may need to take place in order to make sure all of our students are supported appropriately. We've also included some little tips in the weekly tracks to highlight the school-wide expectations of be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. And also really trying to bridge that collaboration from school to home, because we realize that is a huge partnership, and we really need to make sure that we're using consistent language. And by asking parents to ask certain questions at home, it can also just reinforce what we're doing in school every day. We have a Spirit Week planned, October 25th to the 29th. I have some information that was just passed out for that. In addition, we have the PTA has a trunk retreat on the October 28th, which we're looking forward to, and we have the annual Halloween parade set for October 29th. That's been communicated for the past couple of weeks in the weekly track, so we are excited that that will be making a return this year. On November 16th, we will be having our fall picture retake, and right around that same time, November 16th, 17th, and 18th, we'll be having the fall book fair. So a lot of things coming up in the next few weeks. I also want to address that last week we trialed the change to our lunch schedule, which was to reduce that lunch period by 5 minutes for our 3rd and 4th grades. Ultimately, we were looking to try to reduce the number of students that we were having to quarantine as a close contact. We have decided not to alter that schedule. We are sticking with our 20-minute schedule that we had planned from the beginning of the year. And one of the things that we are going to be monitoring, though, is the procedures, more like the internal procedures to, ask that students when they're done with their meal if they can put their mask on, because that'll help to limit the amount of time that students are in close contact with their masks off. So we think that by just changing some of those, procedures that we have in place, we would be able to accomplish that same goal. And we will also be relying on utilizing our camera system that we have in the lunchroom to monitor situations when we need to, take a look to see if students were in close contact and the amount of time. So that's an additional step that we're adding onto our procedures, but ultimately that will not impact the time of the lunch period. A little bit about the COVID data that we have at least. We've had 9 students test positive for COVID. 31 students were identified as a close contact. So that means those are students who were required to quarantine for 10 days based on being a close contact. And 11 students who were sick and tested that were currently awaiting results. 39 students were sick but tested negative. And that concludes my report.
Any questions, comments from the board? Dr. Rizzo, thank you very much. Special education report. Mr. Dorr.
So I'll try to keep this short, but there's a lot that this board is doing to support our students with exceptionalities in this district, and I just want to make sure you're aware and I just appreciate the support that you're giving. I just really always have to, it's one of those things, we have a mantra that, all students in special educations are general education students, so I just really do appreciate the staff of both buildings kind of working towards that shared vision. And so, one of the things that staffing, as Ms. Cusick was talking about, that's a challenge that's really hitting every district, and it's definitely hitting special education very acutely. I think relative to most of my counterparts in other districts, we're actually doing really well, but it still is a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for the building principal and the building principals at each building to kind of staff that building every day, and I just appreciate their support with that. We wanted this big change with really building that foundation for co-teaching, and on October 8th, Susie Nees from West Forty came in and provided a training with me on co-teaching. I'm working on building norms, shared responsibilities, and part of it throughout the entire program, building longevity and sustainability, because Susie's not going to be here forever. How do we maintain this? How do we grow our own thing? And one of the things that, as I reflect way too much on this district, and I'm thinking about this all the time, we have 8 new to co-teaching co-teachers in the school district out of 10 on the general education side. And at Giles, we have 2 brand new special education new to co-teaching co-teachers at Giles. So we have 10 staff that are learning this very complicated model and learning how to do it. That's a lot going on. We have a co-teaching committee that is helping drive this work on 11-1 after school. That's been sent through Sean's report and Evan and Giles. We have a lot of students with and without IEPs that are demonstrating additional needs for support. I really want to recognize our teachers and related service staff and paraprofessionals who are going above and beyond to support this transition, especially for our students in grades K through 2, from my perspective and the data that I'm seeing, who have never had a traditional year of school in their academic. It's really kind of a testament to our program. Our students are grades 3 through 8, not that there aren't some areas that we're still trying to address, but our grades K through 2, we're seeing some additional needs. And so we actually brought in a behavior consultant to look at some of our programming on Friday, and a multi-need specialist to support our self-contained program here at me, because we had to merge those two programs with the resignation last month of one of our teachers. We've had articulation meetings with Ridgewood High School, and those are going really well. We have another one actually scheduled for November 4th. One thing that's also happening across the state is that not only are there more needs that we're seeing in the classroom, more and more families and various other things are happening. We're seeing more and more kind of need for that additional support, and our staff is doing a great job with that. We did have a FOIA request as a department from a attorney for a parent, and that's something that our department's working on. We're currently going through IEP meetings. Today we had a records request, not a FOIA request, a records request. I stand corrected.
Just not getting hard back.
Records request, thank you. Saw the head nod. And then we had a facilitated IEP training for new staff, and then we just have some fun stuff going on. We're having an esports competition. For those of you who are new to the world of esports like last year, we're going to be challenging Ridgewood in a game of probably Rocket League on the Xbox, and we're actually in talks about potentially having a joint Ridgewood High School Giles esports team to compete in some Unified Special Olympics events. And Unified Special Olympics is where partners without disabilities and partners with exceptionalities partner together to compete together, and that's something that we're looking at. And Bob has been instrumental in being part of that. We're meeting with a representative from Illinois in the next month or so. And we were just invited to a Friendsgiving event in November that we're looking at potentially having a group of students go, and just kind of, we're starting small, but we really want to build that partnership and really ease that transition. So there's a whole lot more going on, but that's the footnotes version of what's going on.
Board. Mr. Dorr, thank you. Mrs. Guzzi, staff report.
Yes, thank you. So you'll notice in the personnel section tonight that there are a few new positions that we're hiring and a few resignations we're accepting. We are still looking for a few positions, so if you look on the staffing report where it says open, we do have some open positions. However, I did want to point out to you one thing we're excited about. We are filling the multilingual department tonight with the 2 people that we are mandated to have, Polish and Ukrainian. So we will have those positions filled, and they have been working on screening the students, and now we will be starting servicing. So excited about that.
Thank you much. Our discipline reports for the district. I'll turn over to Mrs. Abrams and Mrs. Mizell.
Good evening. At Giles, since the last board meeting, we have had 7 in-school suspensions. 3 were in violation of board policy 7:199. 1 was in violation of board policy 7:199 and 12. 2 were in violation of board policy 7:194. 1 was in violation of board policy 7:190-21. And we continue to use our PBIS rewards to track behaviors and to implement classroom management plans and support the teachers at Giles.
If you don't mind, I have the book here, but can you go over what those policies are? Can you specify them be specific on that?
I apologize, I don't
That's
have
all right.
the policies
If
in
you
front
have
of
it.
me.
Well, some of them are for violation of, gosh, I don't have it memorized, I'm sorry. I gotta look up the code, and I will do that.
Well, let's go to Mrs. Mizell, and then Bob, if you can look those up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good
Thank you.
evening. As we've also had a couple suspensions since the last board meeting, 2 out-of-school suspensions. The first one was one student in violation of board policy 7:199, and that policy is like physical aggression towards either a student or staff member. So some kind of physical altercation is kind of the general idea for that one. And then the second one was in violation of board policy 7:19021, which is property and stopping the educational experience for other students, disrupting the environment for other students and staff in the building. We also continue to raid pause, as we say, at Lee School. So pause are our monetary system, if you will, that the students, as Dr. Raviolo was saying in his report, are able to trade in at Walmart. They were so excited. They carried their little pouches. It was wonderful. And I think our youngest learners are really starting to see the positive reward system for our behavior program working here. So it was a tangible way for them to see that, these paws do show that we can trade them in for some goodies that they really love. The poppets are just flying off of our shelves. So we're loving that is up and running, and we thank our paras and our specials team, Wendy Kai, for getting Palmer up and running for our lead packers.
So just to go briefly, 7:190, then number 9, engaging in hazing or any kind of bullying or aggressive behavior that does physical or psychological harm to a staff person or another student, or urging students to engage in such conduct, specifically without limitation and use of violence, intimidation, force, coercion, threats, stalking, harassment, sexual harassment, public humiliation, theft, destruction of property, retaliation, hazing, bullying, using a school computer or school computer network or comparable conduct. Number 12 would be causing or attempting to cause damage to or stealing or attempting to steal school property or another person's personal property. Number 4, using, possessing, controlling, or transferring a weapon, as the term is defined by weapons section of this policy, or a violation of the weapons section of the policy. 21 is engaging in any activity on or off campus that interferes, disrupts, or adversely affects the school environment, school operations, or an educational function, including but not limited to conduct that may be reasonably or considered to be a threat or an attempted intimidation of a staff member or endangering the health and safety of students, staff, or school property.
Thank you for looking that up. Board? All right, I want to thank everybody for the reports. Much appreciated. Moving on to our board committees. Board policy development. There's nothing to report.
Couple comments real quick. So as I dig into your policy development practices in the past, I think you know that I've recommended that you cut the approval process from 3 readings down to 2. So had some conversations with Sarah and Michelle the last couple of days. I think I have a much better understanding tonight. So what we're going to do going forward, there's a couple of times a year where you're going to get a big packet of policy revisions. That's what you have. Okay? As soon as we get those, Sarah's going to put them in your binder and we're going to distribute the binder to you. What we'd like you to do then is look them over. Then at the next meeting, whatever time frame that allows, at the next meeting, we will put those on the agenda for first reading. All right? So you will approve them on first reading, and we will discuss them if need be. Now, with all of these policies that you're going to look at later in the agenda, most of those updates are due to the Press Policy Service conducting a 5-year review of the policy and changing things in the footnotes. They really don't change the substance of the policy. Once you've approved the proposed revisions on first reading, we will come back the next month. That'll give you 4 weeks approximately to review, to ask us questions, and then we will ask you to approve them on second reading and adopt them as final, and now they become part of our policy. So it's a shorter process, but I want to emphasize that on the second approval, you are actually adopting these policies as your policies going forward. Okay? Hopefully that makes this kind of easier to follow along with. So we'll talk a little bit more about that perhaps if we need to, but one of my goals that I believe the board asked me to really work on when I came in April was to get the policies caught up, get the policy book updated. With what we're presenting to you tonight and what we do on November 9th, we will be caught up, correct? With all of the proposed updates, all the questions answered. After the meeting on the 9th, the policy book will be where it should be. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Board, comments, questions on that? Buildings and grounds.
Didn't have much to say. Mr. Gedke explained about the STEAM labs. It's good news. I was able to visit and see the 2 rooms Saturday at the invitation of Matt Rossi. He showed me what was needed. It's exciting. Mid-November is the expected date, as Mr. Gedke explained. And then I think the plan from there is once the teachers get in there and have a look around, see how the layout is, they'll be able to ask for materials and equipment that NSF will then be able to purchase. And I think it's a really good idea because just buying stuff off the cuff without the teachers knowing how to utilize it, acting a little bit excited, take the right steps to make sure we have what we need to really implement. And in general, these STEAM labs to me have been a really big thing because 5 years ago when I started getting involved, or just caring enough to come to meetings and stuff like that, seeing what the kids had as science labs was appalling. To see it come to this now is personally a big deal. So glad to see it. And everything else, living ground, we kind of know about it. That has been keeping us updated. So that's it.
Board, anything with Frank? Okay, thanks, Frank. Communications. Finance.
No update.
Education, parent-teacher advisory, and behavioral prevention are as needed. We haven't met on any of those, so subsequently there's no update. Norridge Park.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, last meeting we talked about meeting with Norridge Park, which we did, to develop an after-school program. So just a little recap. Mrs. Gusick reached out to Anne Marie, just checking in to see where they're at on that. They're right now going to focus on their after-school care program, and so we're not going to see any after-school programs in 2021 with Norridge Park, but they're going to want to start meeting November, December to start planning for the 2022 year. I did get Ridgewood High School baseball program approached me to see if they could possibly do an after-school baseball clinic. I did advise to reach out to admin, and I'm not sure if he has yet.
Yes.
Oh, he has.
It's on the
Okay.
agenda tonight.
Oh, okay. And then that's it. So we're just waiting on that.
So if I may, at the direction of the president last month, we have had internal conversations about what types of after-school programs we might be able to offer in lieu of the Park District. We certainly appreciate their partnership. We want to continue that. So we have talked at the administrative team level about some ideas for some enrichment type programs and some other type programs. We've had preliminary conversation with the district leadership team, and then Mrs. Guzik and I met with the two co-presidents last night and had further conversations. So we are moving forward on identifying what some possible activities could be for our students to engage in, and we're looking to hopefully roll those out in January. So we will continue to keep you updated on that.
Negotiations. We are in a negotiating year. It's a bargaining year. There's nothing to report from my seat right here, but I know later on in the meeting, Mr. Grimm is going to touch on it. You can see it. The agenda, it's collective bargaining and the interest-based approach. He's going to touch on that later on. Okay. We have a consent agenda. I ask the board to consider the approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Okay, I need a motion to then approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Frank, seconded by Molly. So roll call?
Mr. Fabrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Rosano?
Yeah.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Okay, motion carries.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
just one quick comment here. So you have the expenditure and revenue report through the end of September, which is the end of the first quarter of the new fiscal year. I always like to look at where we are in terms of actual revenues and actual expenditures to budget, and report to you just on a surface level what that total looks like for the entire budget. So if you look at the expenditure report, total expenditures at the end of September came in at 24.53% of budget. Our target number was 25 or less, so we're below that by about 0.5%. My compliments to Dr. Schilling and the work that he did, and to everyone's management of the budget. That's an accomplishment that's not often met in the first quarter. I think Dr. Schilling knows what I'm talking about, because we front load so many of our expenses in July and August, it tends to skew the budget. So this is really, I think, good news for us. And then on the revenue side, again, it would be at 25% of actual revenue received to budget, and our number at the end of September is 40.4%. So we're a little bit ahead on the revenue, which is kind of interesting given the lateness of the distribution of property tax money from Cook County. So we'll certainly hope that continues for us. But, I just again want to say thank you, Craig. Good job on all your work helping us with the budget, and we're right where we should be.
Thank you. Moving on to our action items. I ask the board to consider the approval of the district maintenance plan and presentation of draft job description for review. Any discussion? I'll need a motion to approve the district maintenance plan for presentation of draft job description for review. Motion made by Lewis, seconded by Frank. Sarah, roll call.
Mr. Rosano?
Yeah.
Mr. Fabrizio?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. I ask the board to consider the approval of the administrative assistant structure plan and draft job description. Discussion. Guys, I need a motion to approve the administrative assistant structure plan and draft job description.
I'll motion.
Renzo, seconded by Norridge. Roll call, please.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mrs. Long. Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson. Mr. Lozano. Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Plaza.
Yes. Motion carries. Next, the board to consider the approval of board policy 7:180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment, to waive first reading and approve on second reading. Discussion?
This is just an update to the meetings for the non-discrimination coordinator and complaint manager. The substance of the policy itself did not change. But we noticed this the other day, and so we thought we needed to bring it to you to make that update.
Board? I need a motion to approve board policy 7:180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment, to waive first reading and approve on second reading.
Motion.
Molly, seconded by Maria. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mrs. Long. Yes. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mr. Plaza.
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mr. Lozano.
Motion carried. I ask the board to consider the approval of the revisions to job descriptions for administrative assistants, Board of Education, and superintendent, payroll and human resources, special education, and district registrar. Discussion, comments? Need a motion to approve the revisions to job descriptions for administrative assistants, the Board of Education and superintendent, payroll and human resources, special education, and district registrar.
Motion.
Frank, seconded by Chris. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mr. Lozano. Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mrs. Lala. Yes. Mr. Plaza.
Yes. Motion carries. I ask the board to consider the approval of the revisions for board policies, second reading and adoption of the following. 2:265, Title 9, Sexual Harassment Grievance Procedure. 4:45, Insufficient Fund Checks and Debt Recovery. 4:130, Free and Reduced Price Food Services. 4:180, Pandemic Preparedness Management and Recovery. 6:250, Community Resource Persons and Volunteers. 7:10, Equal Educational Opportunities. 7:190, Student Behavior. And 8:30, Visitors to and Conduct on School Property. Conduct on School Property. Discussion. Okay, any motion to approve the revision of the board policies mentioned above? Second reading and adoption.
No motion.
Second.
Motion by Lorenzo, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mrs. Lala. Yes. Mr. Plaza.
Yes.
Mr. Lozano.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Consider the approval of the Consolidated District Plan. Discussion. I'll ask for a motion to approve the Consolidated District Plan.
Motion.
Second.
Chris, Molly. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mr. Plaza.
Yes.
Mr. Lozano. Mrs. Lala. Yes. Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Motion carries. I ask the board to consider the approval of the memorandum of understanding, also known as an MOU, regarding teacher evaluations. Discussion? I'll ask for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding, also known as an MOU, regarding teacher evaluations. Motion. Frank, Maria, roll call, please.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mrs. Lala. Yes. Mr. Johnson. Yes. Mr. Lozano.
Yes.
Mr. Berard.
Yes.
Mr. Plaza.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ask the board to consider the approval of a speech language pathology clinical education affiliation agreement, MSSAP, Advanced Clinical Practice Discussion. Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve speech language pathology clinical education affiliation agreement, NSSLP, advanced clinical practice. Chris and Marie. Roll call.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Juliano?
Yes.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Motion carries. Consider the approval of the AT&T 3-year contract extension for elevator phone lines. Discussion. Motion to approve the AT&T 3-year contract extension for elevator phone lines. Second by Molly. Roll call, please.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Rosano? Mr. Juliano?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Consider the approval for the application and agreement for use of district facilities for Rebels basketball. Discussion. Ask for a motion to approve the application and agreement for use of district facilities for Rebels basketball.
Let me ask you a question before you go.
Sure, yes, sir.
This is, what, the second time we asked the board to approve this facility use agreement, and so, if you notice, there was no information provided on any fees that we're gonna charge them, and so we said we would bring the things to you, and we need some direction on whether you feel it's appropriate to charge the fees that are contained in the policy or to waive the fees for this request.
Initial question I have is, how many of the participating players is this a junior Rebels thing?
It is.
Yeah, so how many of the players are District 8 students? Do we know that number?
According to Mr. Morales, they all are.
I don't have an issue with the fee being waived. If somebody does, now's your time to speak up.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Ron?
Yes, it does. I do want to raise another concern. This is going to be after hours, and so, we have groups in after hours. Supervision is always a concern in terms of having the students perhaps go to the restroom. Now, at Giles, that's not so much of a problem, but over here, it is a problem, having students out in the hallway and so on and so forth. So I just want to keep that in front of you as we think about some of these requests. We will have another request for you on November 9th. It'll be similar to this one, I believe. And again, this is relatively new for you, so I just want to keep these things up in front of you. Consideration.
So what I want to say to that is, you guys have to say as to if there's no supervision in here, or people are going throughout the building, then put a stop to it, right? Because as the board president and the board, we want to expand the facilities, we want to help out our students as much as possible, but at the same time, I definitely don't want 2 or 3 phone calls the following day saying people going through the hallways and now this, so it's got to be monitored, and if you don't think we can monitor it properly, then you have to say no to whoever's asking to use whatever piece of the building. Okay?
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
I just appreciate you
Yeah.
verbalizing that on behalf of the board, because that's how we feel it should be.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get input out there, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Am I right to say that junior Rebels rental usage would be basically Anderson Hall and Giles, in which they have the bathrooms in the hall?
Right,
So
and they're
essentially,
asking
you
for
close-
Giles or Leah most of the days, but on the Saturdays, they're asking for both of the buildings.
I don't know. Giles is.
Sorry?
Have we looked into those gates that pull off and go across the Bridgewood has and all that?
Well, we do actually have one here at Lee that we used over the summer.
Yeah, that one.
We do,
Yeah.
yes. I don't believe we have one that goes further down hall, because here at Lee, the closest bathrooms would be down south to the left. Is your
Yeah.
area. Giles, you're absolutely right. Giles, you have Anderson Hall, then you have the gym, pretty self-containing, not really too much of an issue.
Can we just limit it to Giles then, being that we are covered?
And that's mostly what they're asking for, except for the couple of Saturdays, where they're looking at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on those days.
Until we get proper security.
I'm not sure what that day will look like. When I'm reading this, I feel that maybe this is a tournament day, and you'll have a turnover of different people coming in and out during a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday. That might be more of the concern at Lee, because are we gonna leave the door open? Is there gonna be somebody at the door? Can we require them to have, or can we ask them to have someone at the door on those days, if that is indeed an in and out of teams?
I think we should be able to put any conditions set forth that we need. Now, does it conflict with the schools that are coming in on Saturdays? And then what happens?
Well, we would be requiring the junior rebels to have somebody here to monitor the door the whole time. I wouldn't think we'd want to unlock the door.
I agree, but I'm also concerned about traffic. So if you're having a tournament, people are coming and going because you have times of games at different times. And so people will be coming, maybe dropping their child off, leaving, coming back, or coming in, watching for an hour, and then moving out. So
Right, and those days will also require the bathrooms to be cleaned, garbages to be emptied.
I got a question.
On a Saturday and a Sunday.
I'm looking in the board book. Is the request for the facility in the book?
Correct.
Where is it? Michelle? I can't
Scroll
find it.
down,
I keep scrolling.
it is, I'm in it, it's, what is the item number? The item we're on right now? It is J, under 14J. You'll have the application, if you scroll down to page 3, page 4,
Okay.
then he lists the dates that he's looking for. Dates and times. My concern is the Saturdays. The nights that he's asking for 5:30 to 8:30, assuming that we're out of the gym for our own sports events, if we're looking at Giles, we can hold off cleaning those bathrooms till after 8:30. That would be okay, just rearrange our citywide schedule a little bit. But it would be the Saturdays that would be more concerning.
Are we voting on this paper?
Yeah, we're going to, but I have a couple of questions. Are these just practices for the junior rebels and all the District 80 kids that participate? Because you mentioned something about tournament.
You know what, to be honest with you, I didn't ask that question. I'm interpreting this as 9 to 5, that there's different teams coming through.
Because
and
I'm-
not the same people.
No,
So
because I'm going to go on
that.
record and saying if it's just for the junior rebels and they're all District 80 students, that's what I was answering your question to waiving the fee.
Okay.
If there's multiple people coming in and out of the building and this is some type of tournament, and this is supposed to be a non-for-profit helping our students out using the facilities.
Great.
So I need some clarity on that before I give my vote, and I'm glad we're discussing it more in depth, because my impression and my interpretation of it was they wanted to use the facility to have extra practices. We were told that it was 80%, if not more, District 80 kids, and I want to make sure that that's exactly what we're talking about before I say yes, and then there's 3 or 4 different people coming in the building, and then it's going to lead to phone calls because people are going to walk through the building.
Yeah, you're absolutely
So,
right. This could be something different. Could be 9 to 10 is free throwing and 10 to 11 is layups. I honestly don't know.
Right, because I'm looking over the request, and, okay,
And does it say how much our district children are getting paid for this?
No, we do not know
no,
that. It is a profit
Mr. President,
organization.
I spoke with Coach Moraz.
Okay.
yeah,
It is a tournament on the weekend. So the weekend is a tournament. During the week, it sounds more that it's strictly for the rebels. Them coming in, practicing in the facility, but the weekend is definitely a tournament.
and, okay, what are the specifics to this tournament?
So they're looking to expand the tournament at Ridgewood, using the courts at Ridgewood, and then having 2 satellite sites, one here and one at Giles for the tournament. So I would assume through our discussion that it would be, because when you have a basketball tournament, mostly it's a charged entry fee, so that they would have an entry fee here, so there would be people monitoring the front doors, charging admission for the tournament.
For me, we're still in the discussion piece. For me, I have no problem giving my vote to a facility request, especially when it provides for our students that go here. I have no knowledge of everything else that's being told to me right now, so my vote in totality, I'm not prepared to make it. I have no idea how many people are coming in and out of the buildings. I have no idea who's gonna watch the door. Until I have that spelled out, either we table it, or if you guys wanna go ahead and vote for it, I'm not prepared I'm not versed in it enough. No way.
I would like to motion to table this.
I agree.
And Michelle, if you could, when you talk to the requester of the facility,
Yes.
and I need some more detail. It sounds like the rest of the board does too.
I did that detail for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the question I had, did I already ask for the motion on it? So now on the discussion.
I motion to table.
We had an initial motion.
Yeah.
So the proper procedure would be to ask the person who made the motion if they would agree to withdraw the motion. Who made the motion?
I make a motion to table this topic.
Yeah, no, we need to close over for discussion, no motion.
Did not have an initial motion?
No. No.
We were about to, I think.
And then the motion to table is appropriate. And then the second.
Okay, so we're gonna table that, but I wanna make note of the request. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 different dates and time requested for both facilities, me and Giles. I don't have enough information. I need more. It needs to be more descriptive, and that's it.
I like that.
Totally unprepared for this to be on the agenda. Moving on, discussion items. Tax levy, Dr. Schiller.
Good evening. Do I need to do anything to make this show up?
Position on the projector.
Just a point of order, Mr. President, we need to roll call the motion to table, I think.
Okay, roll call. I'll give you a motion to table.
Yeah.
Molly second. Now you.
And I'll get a roll call, sir.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yep.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Berard?
Just the one button.
Yes.
Mr. Glass?
Yes, table it.
Mrs. Lau? Yes. Mr. Monty?
Yes.
Motion carries. Discussion items.
This is professional in this for the legal lectures. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Grimm basically asked me to come tonight for the purpose of going over the tax levy process and a preview, since we have new board members and it's time to review all this. This is the last really major piece that happened. We would sometime in January have a finance committee meeting for basically first look at projections for the budget, starting the budget process. And that really starts with not only enrollment and projects, but also with our main source of revenue, which is property taxes. What are the legal requirements? Well, there are several. 30 days after we adopted the budget, we had to file a copy with the county clerk and along with an estimate of revenue. And that's required, so they have a copy in case anybody wants it with regard to looking at it in comparison to what we requested in taxes to compare to the tax levy. It's required to be filed by the end of December, last Tuesday of December. And the proposed levy passed, if it's more than 5%, and we have had some more than 5% requests back when there was a referendum proposal, but if it's over 5%, the request, because the levy is just asking for money, then we have to go through a different process. We have to go through something called truth in taxation. And that means we have to put it in the paper 7 to 14 days before a hearing, and then there's a public hearing, and then we can adopt that levy. And then the last piece is that we have to pass a resolution to apportion our levy, and that's unusual to Cook County only. That doesn't happen in the rest of the state per se. which just means that when we file our levy, 9 times out of 10 it gets reduced, some of the funds. We have to tell them how to do that in advance. Most of the counties, you get it, you get to tell them what months to adjust, but in Cook County, you have to do that in advance. What drives the tax cap and our tax levy? Well, the consumer price index does. And so there's the last 10 years. It's only been 5% once since its history back in '92. Next year, I think it's going to be extremely challenging because if you see at the bottom, the CPIU is 1.4%. And obviously, you know, when you look at what the announcements were for Social Security and everything else, and goods and services, they are 1.4% right now. They're going up much more. But to give you a perspective, one of the problems with property tax levy is we're almost 18 months to 2 years behind. And that's why we have that 1.4%. So if you look up here on this chart, this is a good way, I think, of understanding the process. Basically, for the calendar year 2020, which is almost a year ago, that consumer price index was published in January. That index was 1.4%. We're using that 1.4% in December to do our tax levy. For taxes that will be collected in 2022. So we're going from 2020 to 2022, almost an 18 to 22. And it's almost really a 2-year lag because in Cook County, as everybody knows, the first tax collection is just 55% of the previous year's total. So if there's any extra money or anything from the tax levy, it all comes in August. And this year, August was really October. So it's a very drawn out process. When it's going up, it's great, but when it's like this and then inflation kicks in, you have that period of time until the taxes can catch up to inflation. And really this, I don't expect you to all, look at this formula and all that much. I just want to say a couple things about it, is that in order to figure out how much money we get, we base it's a dollar amount. It's no longer it used to when houses went up in value, you got more money. Now that's not true at all because it's a fixed dollar amount. So what we get each year is that we get, let's say we have $10 million in property taxes and the CPI is 1.4%. We technically get 1.4% more, okay, than that $10 million. We also get something that we call new property. So that new property is like if you build an addition on a house, a big box store comes in like it did a number of years ago. And so the formula just works so that on the bottom it subtracts new property, which makes the number smaller. When you divide it into a bigger number, it gives you a larger factor, and that's what you multiply to get your new levy. The only other way that you can get this can change is if you do a referendum. And we had a couple instances where we tried to increase the amount of our tax extension base, and those were not successful at that point. So this is kind of the relationship between our value, equalized assessed value, that's the value of all the property, the CPI, and the tax rate. If everything was perfect and the value of nothing went up, and basically the CPI was the same, then basically everything would stay the same. And one of the questions I get all the time is, okay, well, why did my taxes go up more, like especially in a reassessment year, than somebody else's in the township? Because is it 1.4% across the board? And the answer is no, because whenever the assessor decides your property is worth a little bit more in reassessment, and maybe yours is worth a little less, guess what? You get to pick up a little bit more, so your taxes go up, and his may not. So the 1.4 is for the entire district. but it can vary between things you do to your house, whether you put an addition on it or you challenge an assessment and it goes down. So so this just shows that as the assessment DAV goes down, the tax rate goes up, and vice versa. And again, with a tax cap, the dollar figure is the one that counts the most, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this was the last triennial that you had, was 2019. So I just pulled this out of the Cook County database, just so you could see. So basically, when the last reassessment started, you can see how much of this is residential of the total. And basically, you are mostly residential property. Now, what's happening right now, which is interesting, is you're seeing starting to see a little few shifts because some of the shopping centers are not doing so well, and so they get devalued. Where I live, Allstate decided to move out. So whatever happens to that is huge because it's such a big campus. So, and part of that's because of the way people work. And during COVID, they didn't need the office space, so they're moving. So we don't have a lot of commercial that's going to fall into that category, but it's just something to think about as we go forward. This will give you a little idea back when they did the last reassessment. They paid the average median sale price of a home. This was in 18, which was used for 19 at $311,000, and the median assessment and change and value. So again, just a little bit of information for you. Well, this is so kind of small, or it's just my glasses on too, but this is just a 10-year history of all the tax extensions, and the district has this. They can put it up on the website and so forth so you can see it. Basically, the reason I put this up here and do some analysis with it is because I look to see what the average increases in new property are, because that's something extra that we would get above the tax cap. And then, again, this was cut too small. I don't know if I can make it sharper or not. No, that's just... Anyway, I'll just hit the highlight real quick. For next year, the CPI is 1.4%. If I look over the last several years, the average increase as a result of new construction, new growth, additions, all that, has been about 0.4%. So if you were asking me what I was projecting to be total revenue for next year, I'm using a figure of about 1.8%. Okay? Now, when we do the tax levy, I mentioned that if you go over 5%, then you have to go through truth in taxation. So what we do is we'll do a tax levy, and when you get it in December, of 4.99, 4.98. We're never going to hit that. We don't have to do truth in taxation. We can just go ahead and do everything in one meeting in December, and then we can. It's now electronically filed. There is one new piece of legislation that I want to just cover real quick, and then if you have any questions, and that's called the Property Tax Recovery Levy Act. And what that means is, unfortunately, for all of us that own residential property, that our taxes may go up a little bit in the future, because let's just, an example would be, let's just say you have a big box that protests their taxes, okay? And they go through the assessor and the board of review, and they don't like it, so they go to the PTAB, the Property Tax Appeals Board from the state. This law says that right now, there's an automatic recovery of that settlement back on the taxes. So that's added as a supplemental levy on top of all of this, which means besides the 1.8, there'll be a little bit more did we capture that? Now, within the next year, that there may be, there's new legislation proposed to change this legislation that was just passed to make it optional, so that would be at your discretion whether you want to do that supplemental levy or not. But that's the only other thing that can affect this, and it's only going to affect it to the point of where you've had successful either court decisions to lower or the property tax appeals board. Next year, really, everything is pretty, on the levy is pretty straightforward. The only major change on that levy, major changes on that levy are going to be bond interest is up because we refinanced all that. And the other thing is that we are decreasing our IMRF levy and raising our Social Security because we went through an audit with IMRF and they say that we need to rebalance our fund balances, so we're just changing that. But it's all within the, and the way we always do it is we ask for what we need in every fund and we put everything else in the education fund, and that's the one that gets reduced if our levy's too high. Okay? Any questions?
Craig, is the electronic submission just for Cook County or is that statewide?
That's, you just did that this last year, right? It's just Cook County, right? I think so.
Yeah. All right, so the rest of, so Dr. Schilling can address this, but we wanted to give you an overview tonight because when we come back on the 9th, you're going to get the tentative levy, taking into account what he just shared with you in terms of what the increase can be, right? So that tentative levy will be presented to you, then it goes on display.
Doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to. We'll put it on display and then you will approve that in December. And then we will file electronically with the county clerk's office. And that's then what they ask our taxpayers to provide to us to operate the school district.
For sake of you though, right, you're gonna update the master facility plan to include the status of the district architect work on plumbing and miscellaneous work?
Sure. Just real quickly, I mean, it's not a big report. First, we did submit Michelle and I the maintenance grant for 22, and we were able to, we put the 2 chillers in the maintenance grant, so that is an extra $50,000 that we can use for something else that in our, from the bond proceeds, you know, we have discretion how to spend that, so that gives us an extra 50. I talked to the architect, and the good news is, in inspecting everything, you saw that there's a $110,000 reduction in the projection of what we're going to have to do as far as plumbing work. So that's really good. The next step, the plumbing is at a point of where there's several past things that have to happen concurrently. One of them is discussions with Michelle and a group as to, because we've all gone through, including me, we spent a whole day going through and looking at sinks and bathrooms and, you know, where do we want it? Do we want to take any out? Do we want to spend the money to stuff it in and so forth? That needs to be revisited, okay? And at the same time, specifications for, and getting quotes for asbestos work, because if what we would like to do is lay out a plan because of the cost of copper and other things, to maybe do this in small chunks in phases. You know, maybe we do 50,000 at a time or whatever, but in order to do that, we have to have the asbestos removed from the areas that we're going to work in. And maybe we can save some money because maybe we'll get a better price and save on the labor, even if the materials are more, if we can do it after school at night when normally they're not working on anything and they want to stay busy and make money.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we still on the idea of point of use heaters in the bathroom as opposed to placing all of it, not necessarily right?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we need to confused with the.
I know that it got asked of STR, So I think it's, at this point, STR has got to review, is it feasible or is it advisable? I can't see why not, but
Realize that we're not, right now, we don't have any plans to remodel the bathrooms. We're talking about, the plumbing is just to get the pipes and everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, because if you're replacing 100 feet of hot water pipe.
Right.
There's no return,
Right.
clog return, that's kind of a waste of money. So if you run a cold water line, no point of use hot water, I'm thinking it's a big money savings.
Why don't I do this? Since I don't have the answer to your question,
Sure.
I'll get the answer to your question.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you.
And make sure it's in the next packet.
Awesome. Thank you.
That is involved in the SCR study.
Huh?
Just we haven't received the SCR study back.
Yeah, we haven't got the final thing, they just got the preliminary work. And, like I said, once we get some of this, then we're ready to go. And he's also, they are also finishing up the miscellaneous and that all, and so all that is for, so we can get a permit to do the work when we want, how we need, see fit, so we can, and basically we'll evaluate every one of those projects as they're done. So what's the best deal? Us doing it, us quoting it, because we can keep it small, us bidding it, because we can combine it and save money. Do whatever is most economical gets the best, best deal for the dollar for the district. So that's kind of where we are in this phase. And we're really shooting for January on the plumbing though, so we're ready to go in case we can, because that's the single biggest project yet to do.
Thank you, sir.
Hey.
All right, so we have some other decisions regarding these projects, and they center around asbestos. Michelle and I spent quite a bit of time with Pat Rossi last week. And so one of the things that we're going to be digging into a little deeper is dealing with the asbestos, whether all at once or parceling that out for a period of time. Pros and cons both ways. I think we're going to try and get some numbers on doing it all at once versus breaking that huge project up. If you break that huge project up, you incur duplicative cost. Maybe not a lot of money, but you do incur duplicative cost, and we are wanting to know what that's going to be so we can make a decision. And that may also then impact what comes out of it. Right, Craig, would you agree?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So we're making progress. We hope to have this to you for some decisions in December, if not in January.
So I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item that I want to talk to you about is just kind of a shift in focus now to collective bargaining. Okay, so contracts up this year, as you're aware, and we've had some preliminary conversations. I've had some preliminary conversations with you about what this might look like. Hopefully this will load. So I included in your packet a memo to you with some preliminary thoughts about bargaining. And we'll certainly answer any questions. I'll refer to some of this. And we'll have ongoing conversations about this. But my understanding is there is at least some interest to consider using an interest-based approach to bargain, which is quite a bit different than traditional bargaining, and perhaps that's what you've been used to. And so what I want to do is just give you a real quick overview of problem solving and bargaining using an interest-based approach, so that you have an appreciation for the differences between that and what I call traditional bargaining. I will tell you that in my first contract bargaining many years ago, we did traditional bargaining. I never did it again. I did it once and I didn't do it again. We went to an interest-based approach because it's so much different than traditional bargaining. All right, so when we talk about interest-based bargaining, it's founded on principles and assumptions, steps and techniques, which requires training for people who participate in the process. And our goal is to achieve positive results for both parties. And that's a big, huge fundamental difference. We're trying to achieve positive results for both parties. And again, I would emphasize that this is a process-driven approach. There's a structure to it. There's a rhythm to it. And it's important that those who participate in the actual bargaining understand what that process is, what the steps are, and why they are important, how they are all related. This mechanism for problem solving and bargaining is based on the book Getting to Yes, written by Fisher and Urey, and updated with Bruce Patton, Harvard professors all. I have copies of that book if you want to borrow it. At its core, interest-based bargaining is hard on the problem and soft on the people. It's hard on the problem and soft on the people. One of the things that always troubled me about traditional bargaining is we spend our time in the non-bargaining years promoting collaborative relationships, working together, treating people with respect, and then we go to the bargaining table and we beat the heck out of each other. And so we send conflicting messages through bargaining. This focuses hard on the problem or the issue, and we really work hard to preserve the collaborative relationship, the collegiality that we want all the rest of the time we're not at the bargaining table. Some basic assumptions about interest-based bargaining, and I refer to interchangeably problem solving because I believe the tenets of interest-based bargaining are a good model for problem solving throughout the rest of the year. Both parties can have their interests met. Problem solving and being collaborative enhances relationships. The parties should help each other. That's a very significant piece to interest-based bargaining. Open discussion expands mutual interest and options. And that's part of the process, particularly when we're looking for potential solutions to the issues that are brought to this process in terms of identifying what it is that we want to bargain. And we judge our potential solutions against a predetermined set of standards. And those standards can replace the power relationship that is found in traditional bargaining. In terms of principles, some of the things that we focus on, we want to focus on issues, not on personalities. Okay? We're not attacking each other, we're really focusing on what are the issues that need to be addressed. And we focus on interest, not positions. Positions are how you feel about a particular item that we're talking about. We want to really focus on each other's interest to come to a mutually acceptable solution. We will work to create options to satisfy both mutual and separate interests. Sometimes the interests are mutual, sometimes they're exclusive to one side or the other. Where possible, we want to work together to satisfy mutual interest, and we'll deal with separate interests as we need to. We'll evaluate options with standards and not power. So what does this process look like? Well, there are some steps that we will be asking you about. One is a training. So we're suggesting that if you want to move forward with an interest-based approach, we would schedule a training for those who are going to participate in the process. And we're going to suggest that we look at that toward the end of January or sometime around the 1st of February. We'll update that thinking as we get some feedback from our NEET co-presidents. We had a meeting with them last night and we presented some of this and some potential timelines, and so we are moving forward together to look at when this training might be willing to take place if in fact the board wants to pursue this. Everyone should be trained, and we suggest a ground rule that if you are not trained, you don't participate in the process, because this is so different than what has been done traditionally. The second step is a formal activity called the communication lab. Typically, that's one meeting, but I understand, and I think it's a good idea that when this has been done here in the past, perhaps there has been a second communication lab as a follow-up to the first. I think there's some benefit to that, to consider that. So I will say to you that could be 1 or 2 meetings. Then we conduct the bargaining. Now, one of the reasons that I like interest-based bargaining is because it's a form of expedited bargaining. We're working hard to reach solutions that are mutually beneficial, and it eliminates what I think are some of the games that get played during bargaining. And so we generally schedule a couple of weekends, like a Friday night and a Saturday, to conduct this bargaining process. And if it goes well, it typically concludes in that time frame with a resolution on all of the issues that were identified during the communication. And then we conduct the wrap-up activities and hopefully have a celebration that we have a completed contract. So these are some of the things that we will do as part of this process. We'll identify issues, share interests, explain why what we're talking about is important to either side. We brainstorm all possible options in terms of potential solutions, evaluate and select the options that we think will address the issue being talked about, and then measure those potential solutions against predetermined standards that have been agreed to. This is a list of techniques that we can use to facilitate those steps on the previous slide. All of these are important in terms of the different activities that we may use. This slide just generally talks a little bit about the training. It covers the basic concepts that we're going to use. Again, it's common but not required, but highly recommended on my part, that only folks who have been trained participate in this process. The training takes place prior to the commencement of the communication lab, and it typically works best when it's provided by an outside facilitator. Now, I will tell you in full disclosure, I do this training for boards. I'm scheduled to do this twice in the upcoming months for 2 different boards of education. But we have talked with the leadership of NEET to have a separate outside facilitator do our training. Okay? And I think we're moving in that direction. The communication lab is very, very important. It usually occurs before the bargaining begins. This is a significant difference between traditional bargaining. At the communication lab, both sides identify what they want to talk about during bargaining, so that both sides can adequately prepare for the process, do research, possibly brainstorm for options, so on and so forth. This stage of the process is not the actual bargaining stage. It's identifying the issues and the related components of the issue that need to be talked about. Why is this issue a problem, or why is this something we want to talk about? We hope after we do the communication lab, we have an agreement on ground rules, a list of questions that will be addressed during bargaining. And the questions are very specific and very prescriptive in terms of how they're worded. And we will determine the tentative bargaining schedule at the communication lab. And again, we could plan for 2 Friday nights, 2 Saturdays, 3 Friday nights, 3 Saturdays, whatever. We did have a conversation with the leadership from NEET last night, and we both agree that we would like to have this process wrapped up by the time the teachers leave in June. That we do not want this to go into the summer. And if this works, depending on when we start, we should be able to meet that aggressive schedule. These are some potential rules for the communication lab. Nothing here that's too difficult. We'll talk more about those a little bit later. But these are the steps that we go through in an interest-based approach. When we have identified all of the topics that we're going to talk about, we identify the issue or the topic, we identify each side's interest. Why is this important? We're trying to understand that. We develop options, we develop standards, and then hopefully we can come to some agreement on a path forward to deal with the issues that have been brought. And then we wrap up and celebrate. We'll hopefully have a tentative agreement. We have everyone sign off on that tentative agreement. Then we put the changes that we've come up with in writing, create the new contract document, and both sides vote on it and hopefully approve them. So again, I want to emphasize to you that this is a very, very different approach in that we are working hard to deal with issues that have been brought to the table and not focusing on the people who brought them. So we're going to be hard on the issues and soft on the people. This is very much a collaborative process, very much based on respect, treating people with dignity, accepting individual differences, understanding that at times mistakes can be made, and we will work forward from that if it doesn't happen. We assume positive intent. So, any questions? Is this the approach that the board wishes to take, or do you want to think about it, or do you want us to, what do you want us to do now? Because I wanted to share this information with you and highlight for you some of the differences between this and quote traditional marketing.
I have no problem with the approach. I want to touch on one thing, unless anyone else on the board wants to be on. It's going to be a three-person team, myself, Frank, and Renzo. That's what we've had in the past. I like to stay consistent with that. So we have to create, we have to post it, all our meetings, and that's what we have to do. But no, I have no problem with the approach at all. Anyone else?
I can't see the cursor on the screen. I can't see the cursor on the laptop.
Are you reading out to me? Are you done?
Yeah, thank you. All right, so maybe some other questions that we'll have to the board, and we'll ask as we go forward, but I'm not hearing any opposition to proceeding with this, so is the board okay if we proceed with this approach? Okay. Very good, thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so we kind of touched on this, I think, last month, item B, the outline of the district strategic planning process. So I'd like the board I'd like to suggest to the board that you consider engaging in a strategic planning process, and then we look at doing that in January and or sometime in February. And again, I've given you kind of an outline of what that process might look like. I really think that boards of education, the most successful boards, do this on a regular basis. What prompted me to think about this was in looking at last year's September board meeting agenda. I noticed that we had an action item or a discussion item on board goals. And frankly, when I dug into that a little bit, it appeared to me that the process didn't go very far. And so I believe as we are in this year of transition, in order to continue to build a path forward and address some of the issues that we have been talking about, we should put together a plan of how we want to do that. And so that process can be detailed and involved. It can involve a lot of people, it can involve a few people. And so I've kind of laid that out for you. And what I'd like to do is suggest that if you have any questions about the note that I provided you or the process that we're recommending, we have that, maybe a preliminary conversation about that tonight. But that if there's enough interest, we would like to begin to structure this and bring this back to you next month with a little more detail. I think it will aid in the transition as we continue the year to full-time superintendent, Guzik. It allows us to, I think, have some long-term plans as we begin to think about bargaining and what the implication might be from a bargaining standpoint, if that becomes an important factor. But it also allows us, when we get into the spring, and Mrs. Guzik and I begin to transition our thinking from wrapping up this year to really starting to think about the 22-23 school year, having some idea of the long-term goals of the board and staff allows us then to take that input and build it into our grants, our budgeting, our staffing, and some of our other things that we will be working on as we go through February, March, April, May, etc. So it gives us kind of a roadmap. And it provides for some continuity in our thinking. It provides continuity for you. I've often said to my boards, once we do a strategic plan and you approve it, we begin to implement it, monitor it, evaluate it, propose changes to you. So that's the accountability piece for having that. It can help you achieve at greater heights than you might otherwise have by having that course, that roadmap, if you will. Obviously, you can tell I'm a huge proponent of this, a big believer in this, and so I would just suggest that you give strong thought to moving forward with that.
Board? So I think the board's going to be good with that. Next month, you come in more detail, like you said, and we'll look at it. We're definitely open to it. We should approach it as such. Definitely. We will do that.
Item E is just kind of a summary of our meeting with the village of Norridge regarding the traffic study. I put my thoughts down on paper. Michelle looked at this after I typed it. Mr. Blasio was at that meeting, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. Does anyone have any questions? I thought it was a very good meeting. Was very pleased. I'm pleased to report to you that we have had at least here at Lee, we've noticed a police presence in the morning and the afternoon, helping us take care of a couple of areas that we identified as maybe troublesome areas, not just for the traffic flow, but for our neighbors here around Lee. So I think at the end of the day, what we have seems to work pretty well given our space limitations. I think that was one of the conclusions at the meeting. And we will continue to monitor what's happening and get back together if we feel there's a significant need. We did look at a couple of different options, and for whatever reason regarding those options, the decision was made pretty much to continue with how we're doing it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so, like Rob said, I was in the meeting, I got a chance to meet the new police chief in Norridge, and I voiced to him that I got a phone call from a resident who lives on 8209 Giddings, and their concern was that there were cars in the alley, more so at pickup time. Cars parked in the alley, cars using the alley as a thoroughfare, and their inability to get to their garage. So I just want to make note, I want the board to know, let the community know, I did bring that up to him in the meeting. Today and yesterday, I did observe, which I haven't seen before, a marked squad car at the end, at the east end of the 8200 block of Giddings. And I think that helps. I followed back up with a resident who called me, and she did say that it helped, so I told her to keep me posted. And I think the biggest thing is the lines of communication with the village and with the police department are there. So things that get brought to us and to our table that we can handle here on our property, we'll do that to the best of our ability. And if not, we can reach out. So that's helped the last couple of days. So yeah, it was a productive meeting, and I'm just looking, Ralph, at your letter to the board, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead a little bit. You talk about the December 15th date. Number 2.
Sure. We did also talk about a couple of things. I believe it's the city engineer will be here at our December meeting to share with you kind of an abbreviated summary of the study that was conducted and some of the conclusions that he shared with us at this meeting last week. So we're very appreciative of that. I also have indicated to you that the new police chief suggested that perhaps we study this and watch this for a while, and then he is certainly willing to write a letter with me that we would distribute if we need to make any changes and or ramp up some enforcement type activities. They're certainly willing to do that at the appropriate time after we've had an opportunity to communicate with folks. So that's also an offer that he made, and we will be monitoring that and doing that in this year.
Michelle, maybe you can help me with this. One thing I want to bring up that I see happens here on our property is on the pickup times. Now, I know parents can get out of their car, right? And they can walk and get their son daughter.
They can park and get out of their car, or they can go into the parking lot area and get out of their car.
So, okay, let's focus on the parking lot. So, have you had any concerns or any issues with somebody parking in the lot in one of the 2 lanes, getting out and not returning to their car, and then subsequently the cars behind it have to wait till that person returns? You have any complaints on that?
I have not received any complaints.
Okay.
And the information that we send out is if you're going into that parking lot, you need to stay in there until Bill releases everyone. The only concern that we have in that parking lot is every once in a while someone tries to back out of the parking lot. However, we haven't seen that as much this year, but that is a concern.
Okay. It was brought to my attention, and I figured I'd bring it to you because you're here every day, and if there's an issue, it's brought to you. So, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for letting me know.
Good.
I think so. Does the board have any other questions? We wanted to report to you, let you know we did follow up.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask one more question. Because I left that meeting early. I pick up my son and daughter. Who's going to present on the 14th? And is what we were presented going to be shown here on the 14th?
Abbreviated version.
Okay.
Maybe 10 minutes.
That was
Is
Mike.
it Mike?
Yes,
Oh.
Mike, and he asked for about 10 minutes. He was not going to show kind of an abbreviated version of everything, the overview of it. Because we went through literally how many cars are turning this way and that way, and he's going to present that information.
So, pretty big topic in the community. What I would ask you to do, Michelle, and Ralph, and the board chime in, please, we can get this out more so than normal, that this is going to be happening on December 14th. Because the last thing I want to happen, in the experience that I think we have down the board, is on December 15th, I do not want any community, even community members, if we can get it out to them who necessarily don't have kids here.
So yes,
Would
we
we
asked
agree to
Brian
that?
Gazer if we could blast that out through Norridge.
Okay, good.
And he said we can give a grid street, from this street to this street,
Oh, good.
blast it out this time. We just don't have a confirmation from Mike yet. So once we
Okay.
get a confirmation from Mike, then we can blast that out from Norridge, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We can get to our parents, but we can't get to the parents that
We
are.
get to our parents as much as we can for this specific topic meeting and to the community.
So Norridge is able to pick an area
Perfect.
based on the street grid.
That's great. Thank you.
So I have a question, so I just want to make sure the traffic study is going to include those residents that are not just the ones that have the alleys, but the ones to the south of the school. Those streets will also be included in the traffic study?
Traffic study was already done. What's going to happen on the 14th is the presentation of what the study showed.
Okay.
If I can remember correctly, Mike, to answer your question to the best I can right now, it pretty much goes to the west of our building. Michelle, you can probably answer a little better. A little bit to the west.
Also to the south.
And to the south.
Yeah, to see that traffic that's happening on the south side where the
Not necessarily
street is
to the
cutting
east,
in.
per se.
Correct. And it really does look at everything from Lawrence all the way down to the south. And it was conducted at the end of January of 2020.
Okay.
We had scheduled a meeting, I believe it was March 18th, to present it to the community, and then COVID hit. And then quite frankly, last year, we had 80% at the peak of students at Lee. It wasn't an issue. Now it's an issue.
So we in a sense tabled it because we couldn't have people, we were doing meetings on Zoom at that time. So it's being brought back now.
Yeah, we're revisiting. Which is great. I can speak about the paraprofessional rubric. I'm sorry, did you start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say a couple of things about it. As with any type of evaluation rubric, we're looking at growth and how we can zero in on helping people grow and be more effective in their jobs. The last instrument that we had was very limited. So we worked on looking at the Danielson model and then looking for how we can have those conversations and look at actual observations in time with paraprofessionals and help them grow. Help them by providing the professional development for them and really individualize that. So I just want to be clear on why we looked at creating this new rubric. This is not like a gotcha moment of anything negative. This is actually a very positive thing, working on growing, and so we can zoom in and focus on how we can help people to grow, help them in their positions. If you're familiar with the Danielson rubric for teachers, it's very similar looking. And it allows for reflection, it allows for those really rich conversations about what is observed. We'll bring this to you next month for approval. Any questions about it?
Documents, retention?
This is kind of a routine kind of thing that we should be doing on a regular basis. This is just getting rid of some district records. And this is the process that we have to go through. We have to fill out this form and we have to submit it for approval. And so we're bringing it into your night and you're going to approve it next month. Is that correct? Or if you're all right with this, then we will sign it and we will submit this and get this off of our plate. I don't know that it required board approval per se, but we wanted to make you aware that this was what we're doing. So if everyone's all right, we'll just go ahead and we will move forward with this. And then the last thing that we want to bring to your attention, and again, I have a note for you in your packet. We have, Mrs. Guzik has received a letter from the president of Citywide, who has indicated that they are having a hard time holding on to people as employees, meeting the new Chicago requirement for these types of jobs, and pay the minimum of $15 per hour. So in his letter to Mrs. Guzik, he is asking that we approve a monthly increase to our existing contract, of which we are in the second year of a 3-year contract. A monthly increase of $2,977.25 per month, which is an additional $35,727.04 a year. Now, so I want, let that sink in if you must, okay? We did have a video meeting with Mr. Batista, what, Monday? Monday? Yesterday, yeah. Running together, my apologies. A good meeting. He adamant that he has to have this increase, or a commitment to pay this increase at some point. We understand that. I would also point out to you, as I said in the note, there's a 60-day notification clause to terminate. And so we have to keep that in mind as we think about how we want to move forward with this.
So, I'm sorry, they didn't know that the increase of the hourly amount was going to go up, because I thought we all knew about this a couple years ago, right?
We kind of asked that question, to be honest with you.
You bid the work and then you asked.
We didn't really get a straight answer.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't want to misrepresent the conversation. It was a very cordial conversation. I explained to him that, we don't have an opportunity to pass on this increase to our parents. We can't go back and charge them more for registration or things like that. I explained to him that the board has approved a deficit budget for this year, albeit a small deficit. It is a deficit budget. And then, I know that this $37,000 increase gets baked into next year's base cost, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. So we did not commit to approving this. I said I would bring it to you tonight and try and get a sense of direction from you on your thoughts on this. I will tell you that as much as I don't like the increase, if he were to give us a 60-day notice that he's terminating this contract, I do not think we would have a janitorial crew in place in 60 days to take their place. And the bidding process would be significant. It's very difficult to hire people.
And I think, I'm pretty sure whoever we would find would not be at what we were paying or less. Meaning where we stand to end up paying more. I will say I saw this coming, and while the minimum wage the writing was on the wall some time ago, what I'm seeing industries is that now people feel their back against the wall. They had to give their employees this, and now they have to.
Wait, what is the percentage increase on 35,000 or 37,000? Does anybody know?
11.3.
It's 11.3. All my contractors have gone up 5 to 7%. You're going up 11.3.
It's a $2 increase per
Right,
hour.
right now, I'm looking at the bills, so there's 9 people, $13 an hour per person. And then a quarter and a janitor. And the quarter's $360.
So
11%.
we have a number in the contract, a number of hours on an annual basis that we pay for. It's 15,520. Now, that's not everybody, not all 9 of those people work 2,080 hours a year, right? We reduced that number in the summer. It's just not a constant 9 per year, so that's kind of how we come up with that number. But that's an agreed to number that we put together in our request for a proposal. I will tell you 2 other things. Dr. Schilling has done a study recently about us bringing this in-house. And the numbers don't add up well for us because we would assume additional payroll cost. Molly knows that's probably better than I. That would add quite a bit to our total cost. And then Dr. Schilling reminded or indicated to me that the citywide bid was, I believe, approximately $70,000 less than the second next low bid. Am I saying that correctly?
You are saying that correctly.
So they were the low bidder by quite a bit compared to the 3 or 4 other bids that we got.
Would they settle at 7% or they can't go any lower than 35,700?
So I kind of suggested maybe that they split it with us. He didn't really want to go there, but it was interesting because at the end of the 15 or 20 minutes, you know, we kind of got him to say yes and looking at some alternatives. So I have a couple of ideas that I would like to pursue with him in terms of paying the increase, but not all one time. And then leveraging that to maybe help us a little farther out. And so I guess what I'm asking for the board is to give us permission to kind of negotiate with them a little bit. And then if we can reach some kind of an agreement, we would bring a revised agreement to you or an addendum to the contract at the meeting on November 9th.
Where are we at right now in terms of the contract
Year 2 of the 3.
of the 3? And that goes through June 2023?
22, 23, yeah.
How do we know he's not gonna come back and do it again? I'm just asking.
Totally get it. I asked him that question.
We have a contract and they're basically saying, well, we're not gonna do this now. They bid, they said what they would do this for. Now they want more, I know we were half of, or it's half or 70 grand less, but I don't like this situation, but I know, I guess the goal here is to retain them as long as we can, because we're happy with them, right?
Yeah.
We're very happy.
Everybody's prices are going. Hopefully you can get.
I think the discussion needs to conclude now. It sounds like you had, because I'm going to remind everybody that our meetings are now recorded and they can be watched by the party who we're talking about. So, you have the green light, Ralph? Okay, negotiate accordingly and we'll leave it at that.
Very good. We will report back to you.
Board comments? Anyone? Nobody's got anything? Consider a motion to adjourn a closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, collective negotiating matters, and review of closed session minutes. Discussion. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn a closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, collective negotiating matters, and review of all closed session minutes. Lenzo, seconded by Maria. Roll call, please, Sarah.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizio?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes. The motion carries. Note the time, 9:13. We're no longer in open session. Please be in close at 9:15. Thank you. All right, we are now back in open session at 10:09 p.m. Moving on to personnel action items. I'd ask the board to consider approval of the employment of Rocco Ascenti, district title paraprofessional. Discussion on the board's end. I'll ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Rocco Ascenti as district paraprofessional.
Motion.
I'll second.
Frank Renzo, roll call please.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Ask the board to consider the approval of the employment of Alexis Ruiz, district special ed paraprofessional. Discussion. Ask for a motion to approve the employment of Alexis Ruiz, district special ed paraprofessional.
Motion.
Second.
Oh, Frank, Maria, roll call please.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes. Consider the approval of the employment of Sandra, excuse my pronouncement here, M-I-C-H, Mish, thank you, district title paraprofessional. Discussion. I'll ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Sandra Mish, district title paraprofessional.
I'll motion.
All right, Renzo and Maria, roll call.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano? Mr. Monson? Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Ask the board to consider accepting the letter of resignation from Anna Bartusic, bilingual teacher at the school, effective October the 12th, 2021. Any discussion? I'll ask for a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Anna Bartusic, bilingual teacher at the school, effective October the 12th, 2021.
I'll motion.
Renzo and Frank, roll call please.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano?
Motion carries. Ask the board to consider accepting the letter of resignation from Janet Metter, district paraprofessional at Giles School, effective October 14th, 2021. Discussion. Ask for a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Janet Metter, district paraprofessional at Giles School, effective October the 14th, 2021.
Second.
Maria and Chris, roll call please.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano? Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Motion carries. Ask the board to consider accepting the letter of resignation from Nicolette O'Sullivan, district paraprofessional at the school, effective October 22nd, 2021. Discussion. I'll ask for a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Nicolette O'Sullivan, district paraprofessional at the school, effective October 22nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Frank and Renzo, roll call please.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano? Mrs. Lala? Yes.
Okay, motion carries. I'm gonna ask for some help on pronouncing of this last name, from anybody that's willing to help me. Oh, Sousa. Okay, I want to get it right. Consider approving the reassignment of Hannah Osausa, district paraprofessional to district ESL teacher. Discussion? Okay, ask for a motion to approve the reassignment of Hannah Osausa, district paraprofessional to district ESL teacher.
Motion.
Molly and then Frank, roll call please.
Mrs. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Lozano?
Yeah.
Motion carries. consider the approval of the employment of Monica Shkishka. Thank you, Ms. Mesa. District title paraprofessional. Any discussion? Need a motion to approve the employment of Monica Shkishka. District title paraprofessional.
I'll motion.
Second.
Great. Renzo and Chris. Roll call, please.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Trabuzio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Consider the approval of the assignment extension for Marta Supino, bilingual teacher at the school. Discussion. Need a motion to approve the assignment extension of Marta Supino,
Motion.
bilingual teacher at the school. Louis, then
Second.
Maria. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Trabuzio?
Yes.
Motion carries. Consider the approval of the increase of paraprofessional hourly rate when subbing for a certified teacher.
Is it the hourly rate or the daily rate?
The hourly rate by $1 an hour to
So
$7
Is
a
it
day.
the same hourly rate for each para?
Is the increase the same for each parent?
Is the current rate the same for each para?
No. Depends on how long they've been here. A new para is hired at $18 an hour, a para that has been here longer. The increase is the same for each para.
All right, so the motion should be that we're approving $1 an hour increase, right?
Correct.
I want to make sure we get the $1 an hour in.
$1 an hour to $7 a
Right,
day.
so that we're very clear later on.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. $1 an hour.
So I'll ask for a motion to approve the increase of paraprofessional hourly rate when subbing for a certified teacher. Specifically, increase to include $1 per hour increase.
Yes.
Looking for that motion. Molly and Maria. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beck?
Yep.
Mrs. Lala? Yes. Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Trabuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And I'd like the record to reflect that by me asking that question, I just lost the approval for the ending time for tonight's meeting.
I didn't notice that. Well, that's me.
You missed that.
Any other comments?
No, but I got 45 minutes.
Consider
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
Very kind of you.
You're welcome. Consider the approval of the employment of Karina Huerta, District Special Ed Paraprofessional. Anybody would like to discuss that for a minute or two? All right. Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the employment of Karina Huerta, District Special Ed Paraprofessional. Motion, Molly.
Second, third.
Seconded by Lou. Thanks, Lou. Can I have a roll call, Sarah?
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yeah.
Mr. Berard?
Yes.
Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lala? Mr. Trabuzio?
Yes.
All right, it's, motion carries. It's time to reflect on tonight's meeting. So put some thought into this.
What do you do with those questions?
There's a board book posted, so you can see. What do I do with them? I give them right to the district secretary, the great Sarah Bussell. That's exactly what I do. And Sarah does the rest, am I correct, Sarah?
Right.
She's trying to extend
All right.
All right,
A motion to go home.
I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. 10:19 p.m.
My watch says 10:50.
I motion.
Okay, Lou
Second.
and Chris. All in favor, say aye. Aye, any opposed, say nay. Meeting is adjourned.